think this is the new pattern for me. It makes it far more manageable for me to set aside the time to do this podcast. And so welcome to a new week instead of Friday. And that's going to be the change, I think, for at least a week. So not real sure how that'll work out. But anyway, I am Dr. Ray Mitch, your host. You are listening to the Psych Monologues. And the Psych Monologues is a podcast that's devoted to exploring our journey toward wholeness and living in truth and grace. At the same time, we want to take a look at and talk about the profound mystery of our relationship with God, with ourselves, and with each other. And this has been a heavy week, I think it's safe to say, not only for CCU and even the surrounding community, for a couple different reasons. One, we continue to have skyrocketing levels, quote unquote skyrocketing, whatever that is, in Colorado and in and around the Denver area of COVID cases. And that is creating a fair amount of fear in people. And so that has impacted certainly CCU as well, in making some efforts to crank down the capacity levels of offices and other things like that. And that's just that it's part of the deal, I guess, in a lot of ways in terms of what we're trying to cope with. So there was that was percolating in the background last week. And then a beloved faculty member quite suddenly died toward the beginning of this week. And it has sent a ripple effect throughout the community of not only students but also fellow faculty members. Dr. Bill Watson was his name, and it was quite unexpected. He was teaching one day, and the next morning we get the news that he had died. And so there's that, and also the backdrop of changes and everything else. And it's just one more reminder of the world that we live in, where we have very little control. We intellectually assent to that. We will say, yeah, I know I don't have very much control, but ultimately that doesn't really stop us from trying to have all the control that we can have, and even delude ourselves into thinking that we do. Which leads me to the subject that I want to talk about tonight, because when somebody dies, we get reminded of kind of the punctuation point. We know that it's there at the end of our lives, and other people around us know that as well, but we don't really contend with it much until we get reminded of that when somebody near us dies as suddenly as Dr. Watson did. And it brings into quick contrast the nature of our lives, and we assume that it's stable. It will never change. It will always stay the same. And Elizabeth Kubler-Ross once said that it robs people of meaning and purpose when they act and assume that they're going to live forever. So we end up valuing the things that are right in front of us and present before us less, not intentionally by any stretch of the imagination, but it is less because we just assume we will have it the next day. And that's a telltale sign, I think, of our unwillingness really to grapple with the uncertainty of our time and even the uncertainty of the lives we lead. Because the minute that's gone, suddenly the things that maybe annoyed us the most are the very things that are the most endearing and the things that we wish for the most. And so what my topic tonight is what I've entitled The Allure of Certainty. And I ran across an old story that I have quoted many times. And the story is one about a brilliant ethicist by the name of John Kavanaugh that actually went to work at the House of the Dying in Calcutta, where Mother Teresa was doing most of her ministry. And he went there trying to figure out how to best spend the rest of his life, which is no small task at any stretch of the imagination. And so on the first morning he was there, he met with Mother Teresa, and she asked, "What can I do for you? What are you here for?" And Kavanaugh asked her to pray for him. And she quite logically said, so what do you want me to pray for? And he voiced the request that he had brought along with him for thousands of miles from the United States. And he said, pray that I have clarity. And she said firmly, no, I'm not going to do that. And when he asked her why, she said, clarity is the last thing you're clinging to and must let go of. When Kavanaugh commented that she always seemed to have clarity that he longed for, she laughed and said, I have never had clarity. What I have always had is trust. So I will pray that you trust God. I think the current phrase that comes out of our mouths when we hear that is, oof. It's a gut punch for sure. Because I think lurking in the back of all of our minds is, I know I need to have more trust, but where's the trust switch that I can turn on and then I just have it? And see, in the midst of uncertainty, there is a certain allure that comes at us for trying to assure some level of certainty. As a matter of fact, I think oftentimes it's sold to us as this idea that life is really only good when it can be certain, when it can be clear. And how many of us have had conversations, and I can look back through my text lists of people that I interact with, and they will say, so being reminded of some of these changes, even the COVID-related changes. So when can we get back to normal? When can we get our lives back? Yet that quote-unquote normal, or the lives we had before this global pandemic hit, were equally filled with uncertainty. But it's like a very badly trained dog. It may be uncertainty, but at least it's my uncertainty. We developed our own methods to fool ourselves into thinking that we had control. Certainty fools us into thinking that. Certainty and some measure of demand that we have, certainty, fools us into thinking that we have control. And I might add, it actually blinds us from the things that are going on around us, that are subtle indications and subtle reminders of God's movement in the world around us. Now, that may not be the way we want it to be, and his movement may not be the way we want it to be, but it is still a reminder that he is moving. See, our demand for certainty shows up in relationships. It shows up in all of our strategies in trying to keep life within our reach. And trust flies in the face of that, because ultimately the certainty allows me to not feel the vulnerability that comes with trust. And trust is obviously, like I said earlier, is easier said than done. I get it. I mean, I don't know if anybody out there has ever done the trust fall, but that is the greatest challenge I think most anybody will face. And I actually remember at one point in time I had I was doing a class at CCU in the spring. It was one that I did on a regular basis until we got so big that I had to hand it off to another professor, and it was clinical counseling methods, and the students had to actually adopt or understand a model enough to explain it to us. And one particular student was looking at it from the perspective of, or coming at a model that had to do with outdoor leadership and some of the elements that underscore the idea of the need to trust one another as we take a trip or do an outdoor activity or whatever. And so She literally asked a volunteer to do it. And as I remember watching that, the student that had, I'm sure she probably regretted her life choices at the point in time when she climbed up on a table. Yeah, it wasn't just from her heels; it was from a table. And she stood there kind of looking at everybody that was in the group that was going to catch her. And it was almost like she was doing a person-by-person interview. Now, you'll catch me, right? I mean, you're not going to let me fall. And even when the people said in chorus, virtually, no, we're not going to let you fall. We will do everything we can, which isn't sometimes not comforting. We can, but we'll make sure that you don't fall. And finally, she succumbed and cut it loose and fell backwards and was caught as she wasn't so sure was going on. And see, those trust falls are something that we confront, I think, virtually every day. Because the things that we do in our relationships with other people, the risks we take to be known, is a trust fall. It's a mini one. And I don't think that we would be so bold as to look at somebody and say, now I'm going to share something vulnerable with you. Can I trust you to handle it with care and allow me to say what I need to say without telling me how I should think? No, we would never do that, because it would indicate that we don't trust them. But we don't trust them. The bottom line is that we just blow into it and give it a shot and hope for the best. And unfortunately, when we do it that way, we really don't discern the nature of the people that we're doing it with. See, I can't use my vulnerability to make somebody be trustworthy. And that's what I mean, is my desire for certainty and my desire for clarity oftentimes blinds me from sizing up the environment I'm in and choosing wisely, not choosing at all, choosing wisely what I do and the people that I entrust myself to and all of those things. It doesn't mean I don't entrust myself at all. But I think that's usually where the problem comes in, is we fall into this all or nothing thinking, black and white thinking. Either I have complete and utter clarity and I know exactly what I'm going to do and I won't ever make a mistake again. It will always go right. Nobody will ever question whether I did the right thing or not, and everything will just turn out fine. Or the flip side of that is I'm not real sure what I'm going to do, or I'm not real sure how I'm going to do this. I know what's right in front of me, and I know based on my best judgment what that choice probably should be, but I still am waiting. And see, that's another pattern that I end up seeing people kind of use, and that is they are constantly gathering more and more information, and they don't want to make the choice, whatever that choice might be, whether it's a career choice or whatever. They don't want to make the choice until they absolutely know for sure, here comes the certainty, that what it is the right thing. Now, of course, we introduce this idea of rightness into it, and then the question has to come, according to whom? And then we have to confront, who's the audience here? Who's the audience? And the last I checked, God has equipped me with a brain. He's equipped me with experience. He's equipped me with a variety of people that offer their input. But the final analysis comes down to whether I will choose trust over certainty. And again, even when I say it that way, that doesn't mean it's an all or nothing either or. But I will still move forward into the things that I am not entirely clear about, trusting that no matter what comes of it, God can still redeem it. Now, I think something that has to be said is this whole idea of redemption doesn't mean always fitting according to our plan. Now, I think intellectually we can all assent to that. We know that. Yeah, I got that. Except when it comes to me. Yeah. Because when it comes to me, I want some assurances here, God. I want a guarantee. I want to know that this is going to work out. I don't want to have this uncertainty because then I'm not real sure. And then I quit choosing because I still am looking for this unicorn of certainty that's just not going to be there. Why? Because I just don't want to trust. So we fall into this kind of spiral of looking for this magical condition of certainty for one main reason, and that is I don't want to trust things. I don't want to trust God's heart. I am more than happy to pontificate, excuse me, to pontificate and teach about God's heart and his love for me and all of those things. But when the rubber meets the road and when push comes to shove, which rubber meets the road makes sense. I don't know where push comes to shove, but when it finally comes down to the last decision, I would rather have a guarantee of certainty than the wonder of what trust might take me into. Because ultimately, no matter which way we cut it, trust will always take us to vulnerability. And vulnerability lays out the road ahead of us for greater intimacy. It may not mean with everybody else, but it may mean with God. Because I learned something new about him because of my willingness to choose trust over certainty. So where does this leave us? I don't have any quick answers. I certainly don't have a 12-step program on getting to choosing trust. There is no switch. There is the one thing I know is that perhaps when I link arms with other people and allow them to speak into my life and give me the input that maybe I don't want to hear, or give me the input that gives me some additional insight, and then make my best call and allow that to play out, maybe then, if I keep my eyes open, see, that's just it. And this is my last point, I guess. That's just it, is that we're not talking about, that's a royal we, I guess. I'm not talking about trust that is close my eyes and hope for the best and click my heels together like Dorothy and Oz, and then I go home and everything works out great. No, not really. I mean, I can tell you from plenty of tales from my own journey, I've done that, and it never turns out, for me, I don't know about anybody else, forget about how they tell the story afterwards. But I can say that when I have trusted and it doesn't turn out, and I believe that the trust really mattered, then perhaps I leaned into God's heart for me. And the jury then is a hung jury. I don't know. I don't know. And in a lot of cases, that's the only answer we can give, because there's a reason that the old phrase of hindsight is always 20/20. We can Monday morning quarterback all we want, but in the moment, there is always going to be this probably overstating it, but this tear between certainty and trust. And my chance of trusting probably is greater if I drag it into my relationship with the key people in my life who can support me and encourage me in the face of things maybe not quite turning out, or when they do turn out, it's an absolute lavish, grace-based thing that happens to me that other people can celebrate as well. All of it drives us back into not doing this in isolation, closing our eyes and hoping for the best. And then when it happens, we don't learn a single solitary thing. Instead, we keep our eyes open, and whether it turns out the way we want it to or not, we learn something. We learn something. If we're more prone to see God's heart when we're looking for it than if we just hope to be hijacked by it. I'll end with this one last thought, and that is, which I've made this observation before. In the Chronicles of Narnia, each of the children had a unique relationship with Aslan. And, Edmund had a unique one with him because of his betrayal. And Peter had a unique one with him. And so did Susan and Lucy and all the other characters that marched through the pages of the Chronicles of Narnia. But there was one thing uniquely true through many of the stories, that Lucy was a part. And that one unique feature of Lucy was she was the only one that always caught sight of Aslan first. And I would suggest to you there was one reason for that, because she was always looking. And I think in a lot of ways, trust opens our eyes to look, to see the movement of our Abba in our lives. And whether or not it fulfills what we want, because that's built on he's only there if he gives me what I want, then maybe what I'll see is the lavishness of his grace that is there to be with me in it, maybe not changing it, but certainly be with me in it, and be with me in it through the key people in my lives, not by writing something on the wall to say I'm here, but delivering up people who show up at the right time with the words that we need to hear. That gives us maybe just a little bit more strength to face what we're coping with. So there you go. Something to consider for Sunday evening before the week starts out. Something to mull over and ruminate on as the week unfolds. We head into the week before Thanksgiving, and for us in the academy and in academics, it's the week before break. So we're kind of dragging ourselves through it. So as always at the end, let me remind you of a few things in terms of subscriptions and following me on the website at drmitch.com. I have been reminded that, yes, indeed, there are some social media channels that I am on. You can find us on Instagram at the Psych Monologues, all one word, lowercase, and monologues is spelled MONOLOGUES. On Twitter, it's Ray Mitch, and Facebook, it's Dr. Ray Mitch, and yeah, I never thought I would have so many channels. That just scares me. So anyway, but I would encourage you to subscribe. Subscribe on the website. It's up in the upper right-hand corner. Every time a new podcast drops, you'll be notified of it through each of those channels. Or you can also subscribe at raymitch.podbean.com. They have a player, and it will download every new podcast as it becomes available. Lord willing, it's going to be every Sunday night if I can hold this schedule somehow. The last thing, and not the least, is just to partner with us to continue to grow our scholarship fund for the CCU Silent Retreats. We are in need of partners with this to continue to fund CCU students that would like to go on a silent retreat. As it stands right now, it is a fund that is growing incrementally, very small, but still it's something to offset the cost, which is steep for most college students to go on the silent retreat. We have one coming up in April 8th through the 11th, 2021. And if you go to my website, drmitch.com, and click on CCU and drop down to the silent retreat, CCU Silent Retreats, you'll see all the information that's there, and there's a registration form if you're interested. If you're a student at CCU and you're interested in joining us, it's on a first come, first served basis, and we've got a growing list of people that are planning to come. And we continue to I continue to explore the possibility of offering more than one each semester. Given the rigors of our schedule, that may be a bit challenging, Although over the summer we might consider doing something instead just to make it more doable. So there are those things. So subscriptions to the podcast on the website or through Podbean, or on Instagram, and partnering with us for the silent retreats. And if you know of anybody, just to have them come and listen, and if it is of interest and they're willing to partner with us, it would be greatly, greatly appreciated. So I think that's it for tonight. I pray that your week is one filled with adventure and trust and wonder in God's grace for you. So, signing off. Thanks for joining me. Have a great week. Love ya. Later.